Right now I'm priming the fuel a bit because we're gonna start this guy up. I'm gonna use some start pilot because otherwise I probably won't get it running because the injectors are a bit empty, but I think we should be all right. But I'm really interested to see if the cylinder head that we fixed is gonna hold. Remember that crack we had in it on the water channel? I'm gonna let it run warm if possible, and then we'll see what happens with it. So let me crank it up. Wow, almost. She's running. Quite good as well for a cold engine. Now I'm going to let it warm up and see what happens. Look at that. Isn't that a beauty? Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in this video we're going to be talking about the anti-frost plates that are mounted in the engine block of a Massey Ferguson. Now the anti-frost plates are very thin concave metal pieces that are inserted into the engine block, and they are there to protect the engine block for frost damage. Now you might remember that the engine I have here had lots of damage of frost, and you've probably seen it in my previous videos. And in fact, some of these anti-frost plates popped out, and the whole purpose of it is that when your cooling system isn't sufficient enough and you still get frost inside, you get ice inside your cooling system, then the ice will expand and normally it would crack the block. But with these openings in the block and these anti-frost plates, it isn't going to happen. It's going to pop out, the anti-frost plates. So if you see an engine with a popped anti-frost plate, that's an engine that has suffered from frost damage. But you can replace them. They are not very expensive, and as you can see, they are what we call concave, kind of hollow here. So if you place them in there and then you knock them into place, then the surface gets bigger and they lock themselves into place. So that's what I'm going to do. Now also, you may find anti-frost plates like this one in a block, and this one is one of them. It's really a bit rusty because they oxidize. So sometimes it's not always necessary that the engine had frost damage when you see leaks coming out of it. It may also be that they are corroded and rusted through, so then you might have to replace them as well. Replacing them is not that hard to do. Just buy the right size. They come in all kind of diameters, and I'll show you how to knock them in. But to take them out, that might take a little bit more effort, although it's not that hard. I typically drill a hole in it, and I'll show you that in a minute, and then I put a metal bar in it where at the end I have kind of a hammer on it, and I can actually knock it out. Let me show you that on how I do that. The easiest way is to drill a hole in it, and I already drilled a hole in this one and that one, and then just take a metal bar of some sort and try to stick it in and pull it out like that. That's how easy it is. And now we can clean up the openings because they are a bit dirty, because you want to clean up the edges as much as you can. Now it's time to clean up the holes before you put the new plates. And if you put the new plates, make sure they are the right diameter. Now I'm going to do this with a Dremel because that's quite handy. So let's clean it up. Actually, I use a brake cleaner to clean up the sides because that's a good degreaser. And finally, before I actually put the plates in, I will put a little bit of a gasket seal on. Not much, but just a little bit. Because it's an old engine and it may not fit that perfect anymore. I'll do the same thing here. And now to put the new anti-frost plate in, you have to make sure that the hollow side is facing inwards. Always a good check is knock on it with a screwdriver. And if you hear a non-solid sound, then you know it's not fitted properly. But those are, and you have to be very careful with the dimensions because they almost look the same, but they are not. See, there's a bit of difference, just a few millimeters. And if you take the smaller one, then it will go in, but it can't expand enough, so, and it will pop out very quickly. So you have to have the right size, like this one. So be very careful with that when you order the pieces. You always should measure the diameter of the opening. So guys, this is how you mount new frost plates. It's a piece of cake and it's very cheap and you can easily do it. It may not always be that easy to get at it because you may have the starter in the way, because I had to remove the starter to get to it. But it's certainly worthwhile doing it, certainly on an old engine. I would even recommend to replace them on a very old engine because they could be corroded. And the last thing you want is while you're using your tractor that actually they pop out or they break or there's corrosion through it. In fact, I might even have one which had a lot of corrosion on it. I thought I had one laying on the ground here. Oh, this is one which was really corroded through. Yeah? See how bad that is? It's really, really bad. So, and this has been in the tractor for about 25 years. So you can see it's really not good. All right, thank you for viewing and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Hi fellows and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video we're going to adjust the valve clearance of a Massey Ferguson MF35. This is the 4-cylinder diesel that you've seen in all my other videos with a lot of frost damage, but now this time we are getting ready to adjust the valve clearance. Now adjusting the valve clearance isn't all that hard to do. You have to do it when the engine is cold and you need to respect the clearance. And the clearance is the gap in between the stem or the top of the stem of the valve and the rocker. But don't worry, you'll see all this. Now before you can get to the valves on the Massey Ferguson, you will have to do a couple of things. You have to remove the hood first. Now to remove the hood, you'll find a bolt here and a bolt on the other side. And once you undo these bolts, and I already did it to save some time, then you can tip it forward and lift it up. Let me show you. There you go, and then just take it off. With the hood removed, the next step is to remove the gas tank. And the gas tank is held in place with 2 bolts over here, and you need to undo those. And then 2 more in the back. And once you've done that, you still can't lift it off because you have to undo the feet, the fuel feet, towards the fuel filter, and the return. This is the return which you have to decouple as well from the injectors. And then finally you also have to decouple the hose which is coming off the filter all the way down to the fuel pump. Of course in this case it's all been disconnected already to make it a bit faster and easier to show you. And once you've done that, you can basically lift off the fuel tank. Now, of course, if the fuel tank is full, that might be a bit heavy. And with the fuel tank removed, now you can actually remove the valve cover, which is the silver part here. You need to undo 3 nuts, 1, 2, 3. A little hose here that goes to the intake manifold that sucks off the fumes, the oil fumes. And then you have to lift it off. Now, I already undid the bolts and the nuts, and just take it off. Now it might be that in your case that your valve cover is stuck on the cylinder head, so then you can prime it off a bit with a flat tip screwdriver, but be very careful not to crack it. Alright, so now we have access to the valves themselves and we are about ready to adjust them. Now before we start to adjust the valve clearance, and the valve clearance is the play in between the top of the stem of the valve and the rocker. See, this is where we have to measure. However, first of all we need to identify the cylinders and what valve is what. Well, the first cylinder, and I marked it with number 1, is the cylinder closest to the radiator, and cylinder number 4, which is this one, is the one closest to the battery bay or the steering wheel. So I just numbered them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I numbered as well, or labeled the tumblers, the out tumbler, the in. For the first cylinder, in, out, in, out. And to identify which one is what, just look which valve sits across the intake manifold, and that is a inlet valve. If the valve sits across the outlet manifold, then it's an outlet valve. So that's how easy it is. Now you're going to need a couple of tools, and let me show you what you need first. You're going to need a few tools, and first of all you're going to need a spanner number 13, and this spanner is going to be used to release the locking nut actually on the rocker, like so. I already released them a bit, so as you can see you can just release them. And you're going to need a fairly big flat tip screwdriver that you can actually fit in the screw on top of the rocker, which you then will have to turn to actually adjust the valve clearance. Now adjusting the valve clearance is a very precise job, and therefore you're going to need a gauge. And here is a set of gauges. Those are very thin pieces of metal with different sizes, and it is stamped on it what is the thickness of that metal blade. And we will have to slide the blade in between the rocker and the top of the valve. That's what we will have to do. But of course we'll have to select the right thickness. Already. So the first one here is 1/8,000th of an inch. So this is going to be used on the outlet valve, and this one is 1/12,000th of an inch, which we are going to be using for the inlet valve. So I can forget about all the rest already and fold it away because I won't need them anymore. And the only two I'm going to need are these. Now for those folks of us that don't have imperial sizes gauges, a 0.3 millimeter equates to 1/12,000th of an inch, and a 0.2 millimeter blade equates to a 1/8,000th of an inch gauge. So this is what we're going to use, guys, and let me show you a little bit of a close-up on how we're actually going to do it. I just took a valve at random. I don't even know if the camshaft is in the right position, but here you see the play between the top of the valve stem and the rocker, and that's where the gauge will has to go in between, like so, and then you need to adjust the rocker so that the gauge is slightly locked, but not much. You know, you should still be able to move it back and forth, and that's the trick. So you would think now we are ready to go and adjust it. Well, not really, because you need to adjust the valves at the right moment in time. In other words, at the right position of the camshaft. Now on this engine you can't see the camshaft because the camshaft is all the way below, so it's very hard to look at that. So we have to find another way. And in fact, the valve clearance adjustment has to happen when the camshaft of that specific cylinder is in such a position that the compression stroke just is finished and the labor stroke has just started. So the moment of injection, and the name camshaft comes from the fact that it's an axle with cams on, you know, these lobes, you can see that over here, and there are 8 of them and pairs of 2. So this is for a 4-cylinder. There's 2 per cylinder, and per cylinder you have 1 cam for inlet valve and 1 for outlet valve. So in the Massey Ferguson, the camshaft is fitted all the way below in the engine block. It is not overhead like in most other modern vehicles. Now there are push rods which are sitting on top of each of the cams, and while the camshaft rotates and the cam comes up, the push rod is being pushed up, and then it makes the tumbler toggle and it pushes the valve down. So basically it opens up the valve. While it's rotating further, then the push rod is going back down again because the cam is now gone, and then the valve spring will close the valve. It is not the tumbler or the push rod or the camshaft that is actually closing the valve, it is the valve spring. So remember that. So this is what the camshaft is about. Now the moment of adjustment of the valves is at the moment when both valves are closed. So for sure you can't do it in this, when the camshaft is in this position or in that position, but you need to do it when the camshaft is in this position, when it's really flat, there is no cams whatsoever, and that's in the moment in time that you need to do the valve clearance adjustment. That's the moment in time when both valves have to be absolutely closed, and that's the moment in time you actually need to adjust the clearance on both valves. Now, how do you find this? Well, there's a couple of tricks, and if you watch one of my previous videos on how to mark the crankshaft, because don't forget the crankshaft is driving the camshaft, then you will know exactly on how you can mark it and how easy it can be. But nevertheless, if you don't want to watch it, I'm going to show it to you here in another way, not explaining what I'm doing, but just walking you through on how you can actually identify it. The other thing you need to know is the firing order of the engine, and this Massey Ferguson is a 1342, so it means that cylinder 1 fires, then cylinder number 3, then cylinder number 4, and then cylinder number 2. And the firing of these cylinders is happening each half crankshaft rotation. Remember that, because that's how we're going to cycle through the adjustment of the valves. So let us find that first moment, because we are going to start with cylinder number 4 adjustment. So you have a view of the first cylinder, and now you're probably going to wonder, well, we're going to adjust cylinder number 4. Absolutely right. But first of all, we will find the moment in time when cylinder number 4 is at its end of compression and beginning of its labor stroke. So when the cam is totally flat. So that's the moment in time we want to adjust cylinder number 4. And therefore, we're going to look at cylinder number 1 first. If you want to know why that is, then you have to watch my other video. So now we are going to rotate the crankshaft in its normal direction until the moment in time that the outlet valve just finishes closing and the inlet valve just started to open up. So have a look on that one, and you need to look at that while you're turning the pulley or while you're turning the crankshaft. And always rotate the crankshaft in its normal rotating direction, which is clockwise on the Massey Ferguson. So keep rotating, keep watching the outlet valve. Now, outlet is about to happen. So now, keep an eye on it, keep slowly rotating. Notice that this valve is now starting to close, and now we need to look at this valve now. See, it's just started to open. Did you see that? Outlet just stopped, inlet valve just started to open. Now stop rotating at this moment in time, because now you can adjust cylinder number 4. So we're going to adjust first of all inlet valve number 4, and then we'll do outlet valve number 4. So we are cylinder number 4 for all clarity. The inlet valve is to be adjusted to 1/12,000th of an inch. So I'm going to use my gauge, and I will stick it in between the top of the valve stem and the tumbler. And now you can see, it has a lot of play. So we'll unlock the counter nut. The counter nut. So we'll unlock the counter nut, like so. And now, place your gauge back in there and start to turn the screw with your fingers and keep moving the blade, the gauge, and until you feel a bit of pressure. So the more you turn this nut, the more pressure you will have. So, but not too much, just until you feel it. And then stop. Then, take your flat tip screwdriver and a wrench and hold that screw absolutely in place while you're going to tighten up the counter nut. See how the tip of the screwdriver stays in place? Now check it out, because sometimes it can move a bit. It's still good. And I need to tighten a bit more. And let's see. Yeah, this feels good. And if it doesn't, hold the screw, release a bit, Turn it back in and lock. See, now it's too much because now I can't move it anymore. This is good, and now you can tighten it. And always hold the screw in place. So this is good. So now we do the outlet, exactly the same, release. And now with a gauge of 1/8,000th of an inch, put it in place, turn on the screw clockwise until, keep moving until you feel a bit of resistance. A little bit more. Yeah, that's good. So now we put the flat tip screwdriver in, making sure the screw isn't moving, and tighten the counter nut. And double check. Yeah, that is a little bit too much, so I have to release it a bit and give it a little turn. Check it again. Yeah, that feels a lot better. And now I will lock it in place. There we go. Double check again. Good. So we adjusted the valve clearance of cylinder number 4. What's the next cylinder to adjust? Well, it's number 2. And why is that? Well, we're working with a engine which is has a firing order of 1342. So after cylinder number 4 has fired, because that's the moment in time we actually now have adjusted the valves, it is cylinder number 2 who's going to fire. And it fires exactly 180 degrees of crankshaft rotation after cylinder number 4. So all what you need to do now is rotate the crankshaft half a rotation. And you might want to put markers up, but look at my other video on the explanation on how that works and how you can place the markers. And then you can adjust cylinder number 2 the same way as I showed you on cylinder number 4. And what's the next cylinder after number 2? Well, then it's cylinder number 1, right? It's a 1342. After 2 comes 1. And then again, you rotate the crankshaft half a rotation, 180 degrees. Adjust cylinder number 1. When you're done with that one, then you rotate the crankshaft another 180 degrees or half a rotation, and then you can adjust cylinder number 3. And then you're basically done. And once you're completely done, I always recommend to go through it one more time and double check the clearance. That is how easy it is, guys. Thank you for viewing. I'll see you in my next video. Alright guys, it's about time to start putting things together now. I'll start mounting the water pump, the thermostat housing, the thermostat, the radiator. I also have to mount the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold, the air filter, the starter, the dynamo, the belt, you know, all these little things. I have to refit the injectors. I need to connect up all the new tubing on that, but I'm not going to show you all that in detail because you can all do this. This is easy stuff, so I may have a little time lapse now showing you while I'm going through all this work. And hopefully, after I'm done with this, I can crank this baby up. Right now I'm priming the fuel a bit because we're gonna start this guy up, and I just wonder if it's gonna run. I'm gonna use some start pilot because otherwise I probably won't get it running because the injectors are a bit empty, but I think we should be all right. But I'm really interested to see if the cylinder head that we fixed is gonna hold. Remember that crack we had in it on the water channel? I'm gonna let it run warm if possible, and then we'll see what happens with it. So let me crank it up. Wow, almost. Yeah! Yeah, that works all right. She's running. Quite good as well for a cold engine. Now I'm gonna let it warm up and see what happens. Well guys, I'm not gonna keep you busy watching this. I'm gonna let it warm up now and then see what happens. Right now it's only at, what, 40 degrees centigrade. Not even near to the 60 or 70 I want to get. Look at that, isn't that a beauty? Well, she is doing real good. I haven't seen any leaks so far, and now she is at around 70 degrees centigrade, so that's just perfect, working just fine. All right. So guys, that was it. The Massey Ferguson MF35 is back alive and everything looks okay. I'm gonna have a last check. Yeah, I see no leaks whatsoever, so that's really good. So we are good to go. One last check on this side. Yep, and that's good. So I'm a happy chap. All right, let me put her inside, put the hood on. All right, good. So guys, this is it. The Massey Ferguson is fixed, it's back on the road, and it's good for another 25 years. Thank you for viewing.